Sure, thank you. Okay. If you'll look at these and let's see if they look good to you, Mr. Tyner.
Yes, sir. I make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, they pass. Ms. Howard is our alternate, and she'll be here with us unless Mr. Lanier shows up. Mr. Holmes.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, committee. I'll give you kind of the basic presentation, and Officer Branscombe can fill you in any additional details you may need. These are some items that I believe Mr. Busby brought to our attention along with Officer Branscombe. Just some issues we're seeing specifically, kind of unique issues in District 4 and in the University apron. There are some parking regulations that Officer Branscombe feels are the fines are very, very minimal. These are things like parking in areas where parking is generally not allowed. Let's like parking on a sidewalk, I think, is one of the examples, where the parking tickets are so low that people are basically ignoring it. And so there are a couple items that we're amending the code section that sets the court fines for those parking issues. And making them a little more teeth. I think we're changing some 15s or some 25s to 50, and a couple 50s to 100.
What is the handicap parking fine now?
$100.
So you're not moving it up?
Only the ones you see in bold, the three you see in bold there are the ones that are changing. Yes, sir.
I just say that because I get a lot of phone calls about handicap parking.
With these, and when this first came up, I was a little concerned about how we were going to do this, and this actually to me makes a lot of sense. What I didn't want to do is you don't want all of a sudden set everybody's overtime parking ticket to be $50 or $100.
No.
But these are parking offenses that you're not going to accidentally commit. You're not going to not get out from the restaurant in time so you have a parking ticket. This is you're pulling up and parking in the front yard, you're pulling up and parking on the sidewalk. So any more specific questions, I think Branscombe could probably go into more examples
Or I have an entire photo album I'd be willing to put up of what it looks like.
Do you have people
Chief,
in?
I really appreciate what y'all do over there. It never ends.
Well, my comment was gonna be, it's one thing to have a fine, but having the manpower to enforce all this is more difficult than some of our constituents understands, quite frankly.
Well, and this quite likely isn't
That's
a magic
handicap
bullet, but
parking.
it's the easiest, smallest step we can take to addressing it.
Yeah. Any questions or comments?
Branscombe want to say?
Did you need to say anything else, sir?
If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Okay.
Like you said, it's the first step to hopefully getting some of these repeat offenders to pay a little bit of attention, and we can kind of curb it a little bit. It may work, it may not, but
Do these escalate, Mr. Holmes?
They do not.
Okay.
I make a motion that we approve.
Your second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. All right, Mr. Okay.
Good afternoon.
Okay. How are you?
Good, how are you guys? This is for DROD 522. We have Paul Williams here with Baywood Hotels. Their petition was to construct a 5-story hotel on the property south of 2117 Jack Warner Parkway. This is in Council District 1 and it's zoned BC DROD.
I know you have a presentation, but
Yeah.
I want to ask this. Is this going to front on Jack Warner, or is it tucked in behind there somewhere?
It almost
Under the
fronts,
power lines.
That's what I thought.
it's actually just north of that, and I guess really it fronts 21st.
Okay.
But it's kind of a long, narrow building. The aerial images will help a lot. So here's that piece of property. You can see the power lines Mr. Busby was pointing to. And then this is the subject property. You can see there the intersection.
So we're not going to tear all that down up there. They're not going to buy that and tear it down or anything.
Not touching the power lines.
Okay. I mean, what's on Jack Warner already?
Nope, yeah, it's behind that. So it faces that loop turn in that you see there. That's where the front of the building will be. So again, it's a 5-story hotel, 6 stories, including the basement level though. It will have 101 rooms total and 94 parking spaces. Brick building, metal railings, and metal frame windows are the design components.
I'm sorry, I'm confused. Is this the one we've already approved sometime back? Or
It
is this
is.
further north down towards Jack Warner?
Mr. Alls can remind us of when it was last approved. I think it was about 15 months ago.
Okay.
That's right, yeah. So they are just outside of their 1 year of,
Okay.
yep, so it expired when they were applying for LDPs and building permits. And so they're having to come back for the same submittal. There were some tweaks. I believe at that time it was 95 rooms and now it's 101. That's because of some of the site elements, as they were digging or doing some of their site measurements, they were gonna have to dig more, and so they might as well do a full basement, I believe is the conclusion they got to. But at the end of the presentation, we'll let them speak to some of those items.
If you'd like to say something. Oh,
Hey,
no,
no,
sorry,
that's-
when you were done. I thought you said you were. I misunderstood.
I've got like 5 slides for you. We'll get through it quick. This is more on their brand. I'll let them speak to that when they come up. And here is the site plan with contours. So you can see pretty heavy contours there along the power lines, and then that's where the building is going to sit. Here are some renderings of the building. These are let me clarify, these are the 2 previous renderings. You can see right there we've got a half basement level, and then this is the update this time. So some slight design changes, and then over on that northernmost side, it's now a full basement level. Here's some interior renderings. And these are the sample floor plans. This includes their lobby and dining area. So this was basement, first floor, and then the consecutive floors above.
And I presume they meet the minimum for parking.
They don't have a minimum requirement for parking.
Oh, okay.
So it's slightly out of balance if they were to have typical parking standards, but they don't have any parking standards. So it's 101 bedrooms, but 94 parking spaces. But again, there is no requirement here. So that'll be up to them how they decide whether they want to have a valet or, we've got other examples of hotels that don't fully meet their parking.
It is very common to see their parking is not outside of the ordinary.
Okay.
And this was seen in August. Their resubmittal was seen in August of this year at Planning Commission, and they unanimously recommended approval. That's all I got for you.
Any questions, Mr. Tyner? Mr.
Nope.
Cowley?
I still am not sure where it is.
Bottom Monfour's old property.
Where?
Monfour, on the lot before, it's near the old chamber.
Oh,
Yeah,
What
it's
was it?
behind
Right
Mr.
there, that's
Waters'
the
property.
best picture.
across from
Yeah.
Synovus?
Okay.
Behind
Yeah.
jail.
So
No.
Synovus is the large parking lot that
Well,
you
you-
see all the way on the right
Yeah.
across the street on Jack
Oh,
Warner.
uh-huh.
So this is behind those existing buildings.
Let
And
me
it's-
put it in terms Mr. Tyner can understand. That's JOV at
Right.
Bowers Hardware.
I know where we are now.
Like it.
Thank you, Colonel.
Was there anything y'all'd like to say?
I mean, really here for questions or if you need any more
What
information.
color is that brick gonna be?
It's the standard Alabama brick. everybody
Oh, it's not gonna be
knows.
orange. That
No.
looked a little orange.
Images
I was
can get a
thinking
little.
that.
Images
All
can
the
get a
colors
little.
on camera.
Oh, no.
Yeah, if it was orange, you'd have several people would not stay there, I could promise.
Absolutely understand.
Any other questions for this? Do we have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
All right, motion is second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, that brings us down to Ms. Kreitz.
Ah, yes. And y'all have restrained me to the podium, so this is gonna be weird for me. I don't know quite how to do this without feeling like a preacher. So, we got
We
this.
won't mistake you for that.
I know, that is good. So this is mostly, I wanna take a few seconds.
Yeah.
Do what?
No, go
Yeah,
ahead.
that's fine.
We're being rude.
That's fair. We were asked, to do an audit, basically, of our sidewalk cafe ordinance. We started taking a look at it when we started the queuing permit process, and we wanted to make sure that our current sidewalk cafe ordinance was, number one, being followed, number two, that what changes do we need to make? Because we know there's been a lot of discussion, a lot of things that we have found that could be wrong, pathways that may not be maintained the way that they should be. So you had a multi-department staff team that took a look at this, and you'll see there were a ton of staff members that were involved between accounting and finance, infrastructure / public works, city attorney, city engineer's office, operations, TPD, and UD. And I drew the short straw, or the lucky straw, to get to talk to you all about this evening. We also took a look at other communities and how other communities handle sidewalk cafes. And when I say sidewalk cafe, this is when folks are using our public right-of-way with tables and chairs and other things outside for their business purposes. It could involve dining outside. It could involve just a suite seating area. It could include alcohol. It could not include alcohol. But these are the folks who right now are coming through and asking for permission to utilize our right-of-way to expand their businesses in some way, shape, and form. So you see those other communities that we took a look at over the time that we have spent analyzing our ordinance. You see sweet examples out of Asheville, North Carolina, and Greenville, South Carolina, places that we have benchmarked in the past through those trips with the Chamber of Commerce. So right now, we have 3 separate permits. We've got a right-of-way use permit that goes through the Office of the City Engineer. We have the Sidewalk Cafe permit that goes through TDOT today. That's what the ordinance says. So I guess it would be Public Works at this point in time. And the queuing permit, which now goes through Revenue, and that's brand new, and we just passed that. So our current ordinance talks about borders, and where those borders, and when I say borders, I mean these bollards that are stuck in the ground right there. This is our sidewalk. The boundary has to locate in front of an establishment. It could wrap around the corner. You think about the Browns Corner property, Glory Bound potentially. They have to maintain 5 feet of unobstructed pedestrian pathway. That's for ADA purposes. It has to have a border on it. It has to be black in color. And those bollards must be bolted into the sidewalk but able to be removed. So if we ever wanted to come back through, we could pop those things out of the ground and keep on trucking. With furnishings, that's the furniture within these things. The TDOT director, according to code, can dictate color, materials, etc. But at a minimum, it has to be metal and black in color, and they have to remove those furnishings at the end of every day. So everybody is supposed to be taking their tables and chairs in at the end of every single day. Umbrellas today, according to code, are supposed to be a solid color with no advertising, no pictures, no writing, no logos. Now, we all know, and Mr. Fail's smirking at me because he knows there's a ton of Pepsi product umbrellas in this area, and that should not be happening. And the umbrellas are also supposed to come in at the close of every business day. So in looking at where we are, knowing that code enforcement is now within UD, how can we make our ordinance a little bit better? And this group of staff came up with some possibilities, some things to consider, and things that you as an administration and policy committee / you as a council over the next month or so, if you'll allow us and if you want us to move forward, we can start talking with the stakeholder groups about this. This is just an introduction. We've not had discussions with our stakeholders yet. We'd like to keep the boundary requirement as is, only allowing it in front of the business itself and then wrapping around the side if it's a corner lot. We need to update the 5-foot clear path to a 6-foot unobstructed pedestrian pathway.
What is it now?
It's 5, yeah. And ADA regulations, and in the opinion of both Ms. Shelby and Mr. Green, they say we should update that to 6 feet just to have a better ADA accessible route. We should probably allow no border in certain cases. You can see that top picture on the right-hand side. That is in the right-of-way. They do not have a border. That's a coffee shop, and so they just got like a single table out front where people can go and sit and enjoy their coffee outside. Does that really need bollards in front of it? I'm not sure. I don't know that it does.
Is there any that's got an overhang roof over it? Are there any guidelines on, can you put a roof over our right-of-way?
So that, the roof happened through a right-of-way use permit. So a lot of these sidewalk cafes are a real blending of permits. So in that example, that's a great question, Mr. Busby. So that first picture that you see, a right-of-way use permit happened for the awning. A sidewalk cafe permit happened for that table. And if they were to queue after hours, they would need a queuing permit. So, but they don't. It's a coffee shop. We want to allow for more variety in borders with materials and colors for barriers. We've taken a look at a few communities that have created design guidelines. They have a document that when people come and apply for their sidewalk cafe permit, there's a list of cans and cannots. Hey, this is appropriate, this is not. And we'd like to consider something along those lines just to assist in that permitting process. I think a lot of what happened currently, right, wrong, or indifferent, this may have been very low on a priority list in terms of enforcement, in terms of coming back to look at it. We've got resources. Y'all have allocated resources when it comes to staff in code enforcement. We can assist with this process. And then we want to also allow the bollards or barriers to have that option to either be bolted in or something removable. If you've got a heavyweight barrier that you want to put out for your sidewalk cafe in the day and you want to take it back in at night, we're okay with that. We think we should be okay with that. But maybe taking a look at that example as well. So you've got some existing examples here. Gray Lady has taken their bollards in. You see further down the wood slats across that central mesa. They got a right-of-way use permit to install their outdoor cafe area. On the right-hand side, this is in the Temerson Square area. Everything from that brick face forward, that's in the public right-of-way. And so they got a right-of-way use permit to build the canopy, and then the I almost said underhang, that's not a word, but the stuff underneath all happened either through right-of-way use permits or sidewalk cafe permits as well. So in terms of furnishings, we want to continue to allow that flexibility in materials and colors, keeping regulations in place, showing approved and not approved furniture. I don't think we'd like to see a whole bunch of plastic furniture that, got purchased at a hardware store show up, nor do I think that any of our businesses who take advantage of the sidewalk cafe, I don't know that they would do it in the first place, but we want to make sure that it's high quality materials in our downtown, especially if folks choose to leave things outside potentially overnight. We want to keep those furnishings within the approved barriers after the business closes, and then specify that all furnishings must be within that border. This includes things like planters, and planters are great. Planters serve a purpose. Planters should not obstruct the pedestrian pathway. So those planters probably need to be moved inside in a lot of instances. I love that folks are greening up our downtown in their own special ways. But you also see the differences in furnishings between, on that right-hand side, you've got Sage next door to, I think that's Reggae, and Reggae's got some cool wooden furniture. Sage has some cute wooden furniture as well. With umbrellas, we want to continue to restrict umbrellas to be a solid color or a uniformed pattern without advertising. And we know that this is going to be a touchy subject with folks as we take it to the stakeholders. A lot of them have gotten Pepsi umbrellas from various and sundry places. They shouldn't have Pepsi umbrellas today. That was against the regulations today. So we'll sort through some of that as we go forward if you'd like us to go forward and continue on. But we want to allow umbrellas to remain outside at the close of business if they choose. Just pull them down so the winds don't take them. Make sure that the umbrellas are 7 feet off of the sidewalk. I know we all love to pick on Mr. Thompson, but when Mr. Thompson walks through downtown in some places, his head can hit some of the umbrellas because they're overhanging into the right-of-way, et cetera, et cetera. And so we want to make sure there's a restriction that says the umbrellas have to be inside the borders with the pedestrian pathway.
Where was that?
Oh, let me go back. This is right across the street from City Hall. That's vegan-ish, and then Ichiban. So, and those are cute little umbrellas, in my opinion at least.
Do they meet the current code?
So our current code says they have to be solid in color.
Right.
So, but a uniform pattern, listen, I'm trying to use common sense.
They look better than,
They do.
Quite a few I've
Like, they're
seen.
very cute. And their little tassels, I don't know. So you got some more existing examples. So you got Sweet Home Food Bar on the left-hand side. They've got a sunshade and then Mellow Mushroom. So Sweet Home Food Bar is a sidewalk cafe. Mellow Mushroom on the right-hand side. I think my phone is playing music. That's cool. That's cool. I don't know how that happened. We're just going with it. Mellow Mushroom on that right-hand side, though, has all of their stuff is within that right-of-way use permit. They've got solid umbrellas all the way through. Their greenery is on top of their border. Really great job there.
so the varying colors are irrelevant.
Nah, that's cool. Yeah, I like it. It passes the test, I guess. So right now, and I think something for y'all to consider potentially, and for us to help you consider, if you so choose, is the applications right now are handled by TDOT. We would like to move that into being handled by the Revenue Office. They're the ones that take in the money for it in the first place. So as we get into it, you'll see there's a $100 application fee and then a $100 annual fee, or $250 if there's alcohol involved. And so again, where we're looking to go with this is to have that application start with revenue as part of the business license, part of the code compliance process. It gets renewed annually with the business license. It just makes sense to tie those two together. And then that code compliance review form gets sent out to the staff for review and approval. And you see those groups that would be involved in that. So when it comes to the fees, the big question is, do we maintain that, what we currently have? Do we make any changes to it? Knowing that code enforcement, as it has been consolidated into UD, will allow our code enforcement officers to perform at a minimum quarterly inspections. Seasons change, needs change, and we recognize that fully. But we just want to make sure that we are being good stewards, number one, of the public right-of-way, and making sure that the regulations that exist today are being enforced as well. So with that, do y'all have any questions?
I've got some comments. So, if I don't have anything against these sidewalk cafes. I think they kind of add an atmosphere to Tuscaloosa. I would ask that the committee look at what the charges are in that space, because that is taxpayer space.
Right, I agree.
And you take a restaurant or a bar that's fire rated for 112 people inside, and they've got 32 seats on the public right of way. You can kind of rough it that about a quarter of their revenue is being generated on space owned by the taxpayers of Tuscaloosa. And I don't have any problem with that. I hope we find the right amount to charge for that. I don't think the right amount is $250 a year. I think they recovered that in an afternoon.
Well,
So that's what I hope that the committee will look at.
I think we'll, and you correct me if I'm wrong, Ashley, but I suspect you'll, with this reorganization of the revenue or the code ordinance people, it'll help y'all a lot to be able to do this now.
And we've got such great working relationships with all of the departments and all divisions. But with that code compliance review process, we've got that down to an art, and
Yeah.
it just makes a little bit of sense to wrap it in. Our queuing ordinance starts in revenue and then gets sent around for
Sure.
review as well. So I think what we'd like to do over the next month, and maybe come back the third or the second admin meeting in October, is come back with a solid list of recommendations, a solid list of ordinance updates after having taken time with our stakeholders, pulling Mr. Thompson and Ms. Moore in to help us reach out to those groups, because this really impacts the downtown area, and it impacts the strip area the most. That's where we see buildings having been built all the way up to the property line,
Right.
and the use of our right-of-way as sidewalk cafes.
I think this will be a big help. Just curious, as you've ridden around, do you ever find any people using this without the permits?
I will tell you that we have found some sidewalk cafes that never got a permit. And I think that's part of,
Imagine that.
part of what we would like to address by moving it into, starting with revenue as well.
Sure.
So there also are some very aggressive interpretations of those guidelines. There are
Yes.
more or less permanent walls built out of boards.
Yes.
Built, again, and that's an aggressive interpretation. The 5 feet right of way or clearance is being abused because in many of these 5-foot spaces, we've got trees planted
Yes.
Right.
with iron grates around it. So if the purpose of it is to allow for someone in a wheelchair to be able to move up and down the public sidewalk,
They
it
can't
doesn't
do it.
work.
Yeah.
Nor can you get a gurney up to there if somebody got medical.
There've been a few places where I have moved folks barriers for them just so that we can maintain 5 feet.
So will y'all be able to provide the committee with some samples of similar cities, preferably southeast college
Yep.
towns, and what they do? Because I don't think, I think the sidewalk cafe concept adds to this.
Mhm.
I think it's just a matter of pricing it right.
And you can see, we've looked at Athens, Auburn, Como, Columbia.
Are any of them $250 a year?
There's some that are very low and some that are very aggressive.
That's what I hope. the
Sure.
committee will
I think there's
get.
gotta be a good medium in there somewhere
Yes,
where it's
and
fair.
we can bring our research to you in a month. We can send it in advance and let you mull it over,
Sure,
because
please.
we've got it, we've had it done.
To
but-
Mr. Busby's comment, we need to be fair to the city as well as to the owners. And, I think we all wanna do that. Any other questions?
I have one, not about that agenda item, but Council President, would this be is this a correct committee if we needed an update on the ordinances for boarded up windows and the fees for the grass cutting? Like, how can we shorten the amount of time that you're allowed to keep buildings? Okay, can we have an update with that?
I agree with you about
Okay.
where you're heading.
Okay.
Cause and Chief Blankley, I know would this be?
We are out of the grass business, so that's not.
So like at the next,
Well, we're out of the legal grass business.
Yeah.
Legal grass,
Well,
we still do it.
I was about to say.
so on the next, on your next meeting, can we put that up for
We
a
can do
review to
that,
see?
or you wanna wait and do it the same time you do that?
No, that's okay.
Look
We
at,
can-
look at the, it's kinda like we was talking about earlier about, what was I telling you earlier about short-term rentals? Like short-term
Okay.
memory. Is looking at maybe shortening the time that we give people to cut their grass, for example.
Sure.
Our up
Well,
fees
my
to
thought
make it
is,
more serious.
our habitual offenders on the grass should be eventually charged a great deal of money if,
Yeah, I actually asked Marion, I'd already asked Marion to look into that
yeah.
through municipal court, see if there was a way that they could, because I know the officers at the time said, I wish y'all would help us and
Cause you deal
increase
with
the
it over
fine.
and over and over again.
Yeah,
Desperately.
because you already know the ones that are gonna do it. I do in my district every year.
Sure,
And I've had some people that I think in my district, it's just been a bad summer, boarded up windows and overgrown grass.
Right.
But I think some people would just rather the city cut it, and then they just deal
well,
with that, and
there
that's
are
not
people,
fair.
I've been told by some of these officers
That's
that
true.
these people never cut their grass until they come out and tell them to, and then they'll cut it. Well, that's not the way.
We had one guy that wanted us just to cut it for him, and we
Yeah.
just paid every month, so he didn't have to do
No
it.
big deal.
We said, we're not in this.
No. If I was in the grass cutting business, I'd be very upset if we
Yeah.
do that. Yeah.
No.
So I can bring, just
But-
kind
but
of, would
he
you like to
did-
see an
he
update
did
of what our
ask that.
current ordinance
For both.
says
Mhm.
for both of those?
Okay.
Definitely, we can do that just as soon as the first admin in October. That's a quick and easy one.
That's fine. I won't be here, but that's okay. We just need to make sure
Okay.
we have folks here.
All right, we need to wait till the next one. It's fine. I just wanna make sure it's coming.
Whenever
out
y'all
on next
want me
summer.
to, we
Okay.
can do it.
If it's not a rush, we can wait till the next one.
Mhm. That's fine.
Then let's.
Give you more time to look at it.
We'll
too.
take both sidewalk cafes and this tall grass and boarded up windows for the second admin committee meeting in October.
Okay, sounds
That'll
good.
be a big one, Randy. All right, anything else from our committee?
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.